Use my head.
Hey everybody, Dr. Meri Crouley, and I'm so excited to have Larry Ballard in the studio with me today. We've got an amazing program today. What we're seeing with the Iran war conflict, it's actually God setting the stage for a great economic turnaround and to see an awakening that's going to happen not only in the Middle East, but around the globe. But before we get into that today, we have a great red light therapy that there is actually an incredible discount that you will get almost half off. Let's roll that commercial, please.
The last time Rob was here with his red light therapy, we sold out during the program. The fountain of youth is red light.
It really helps your body in dramatic ways, not only in the skin surface level, but it goes in deep. It's got near infrared as well, so it goes in deep into the body and helps the mitochondrial process work more effectively.
NASA-inspired technology is this red light, and you can get it in all sorts of places. I mean, the Hollywood people use this all the time, right? The fancy folks.
Yeah,
athletes, Hollywood folks. It shuts down joint pain, melts inches off your waistline. Harvard, Stanford, NASA, like I mentioned, recharging your cells, reducing inflammation and pain. My wife's been using it on her hip and upper leg. Pain has reduced, mobility has improved. Even our dog loves it. Does this really help animals too?
We've got these amazing mats that compare with these $8,000 panels that are just super expensive because they work, but these mats are just as effective. And then we combine it with our quantum energy frequencies. With the code today, it's like $597, right? So we sell them typically for $1,200 off. We're going to send you an amazing bottle of Exodus, which has 7 biblical herbs and the molecular hydrogen with.
You only have 40 of these available because production is apparently a little slow. At QEstrong.com, achieve $597 after your $100 Gruber discount.
Yeah, go to QEstrong.com, put in Meri, M-E-R-I, that's the discount code, Meri, right in the middle of America, and you'll get it, as he said, for $597, almost half off. It's a special sale going on up through 4th of July, so it's amazing. I use it. I have one of these mats. It's really incredible. So anyway, Larry, good to have you on the program today. I'm really excited about the information that you put together. And so, I'm also excited because we have our 9th Open the Heavens scheduled in Branson, Missouri at the beautiful Mansion Theater that was actually the former Wayne Newton theater that he used for all of his shows. It looks like the White House. Actually, Clay Clark did an event there a few years ago, and it's unbelievable. We've already confirmed certain people, Troy Brewer, Kathy O'Brien, and you will be there, Larry, because you actually live in Branson.
I do.
So we're going to be getting a lot of people, Wano Savin and Scott McKay. There's just different people that I'm asking because I just got the venue last week. So anybody of you watching that has a business or a brand that you want to sponsor the event, the sponsor levels are $5,000, $2,500, and $1,000. We can send you the sponsor deck. Go to MeriCrouley.com, message me there, or you can message me at my email, MeriCrouley@yahoo.com directly. So if you're interested in helping to sponsor that event, there's a number of benefits for it, including a nonprofit donation receipt, as well as each level has a different sponsorship benefits. So we hope to see you guys in Branson. It's going to be October 2nd and 3rd in Branson, Missouri. So anyway, Larry, let's get into this today. I'm excited about the content of this program today. Why don't you give us an overview and we'll get right into it.
Well, basically, I did this because I believe that this is a very critical time. We're at an absolute tipping point. People are afraid. Inflation is hitting people hard in their pocketbooks, and they're having to make hard economic decisions. They're afraid of what's happening with this war. They're afraid of what's happening economically. And so what I'm trying to do is say, hey, look, from the foundation of time, God knew this was going to happen. He knew this war was coming. He knew it was going to be over oil, and he made provision for a hook to be put in the mouth in the jaw of Iraq, and we win. It's already been foretold. So this is just to basically substantiate in real terms that is the outcome, that we win, that we've already won. We won before the thing was over, and what it's going to do is it's going to force the Abraham Accords to be accepted across all of the Middle East, ushering in a period of peace and prosperity and economic stability throughout the world. And when this is all over, oil prices have gone up, but they're going to go down. And we'll talk about that. And that's going to mean more money in people's pocketbooks, so they won't have to be worried so much about finances, and they won't have to be worried about the war. And God's going to get just exactly what he said he was going to get. He's coming back for a spotless church. And so as the further outcome of this, we're going to have basically revival breakout around the world, and America is going to be used again to usher that in. So I see nothing but good news. It's a little scary, and what I'm trying to do is to say, calm down, folks. It's going to be all right. Everything's in under control. So we can go to the first slide if you're ready.
Yes,
Here
let's
it
go.
is. This is what it's going to end up in. So what you see is geopolitical realignment, and those are all the flags from the Middle East nations. And we're going to find out that something that I think many people never thought could happen is the little Satan and the big Satan are going to be right there, connected at the hip to the oil producing Muslim nations in the Middle East. And we're going to get the Abraham Accords, and we're going to get peace. Then what's going to happen? Economic restoration. We're going to see that coming out of this, the control of the Strait of Iran over oil, the lifeblood of the world, is going to be removed. They're not going to ever be able to have 20% of the world's oil held hostage again, because the nations have woken up. They're making provisions. They're developing additional logistics channels. They're building new pipelines. And when this is all said and done in a year and a half, you're going to find out, I'm just guessing, maybe 5% of the world's oil flows through there, because the rest of it is going to go through alternate means. And so that's going to mean economic restoration for the world, because oil prices are going to go down. And why? Because Trump has told us, because a principal, very significant portion of the cost for oil is the risk factor of going through the Straits of Hormuz. And so what happened when we started this war, our enemy, Trump is pointing to who it is, and it's over in Europe, it's England. Most people don't know the history, but basically all of the oil tankers, all of the ships in the maritime oceans of the world are all insured by Lloyd's of London. And the first thing that England said is, we're not going to provide any insurance at any price when this started. And Trump said, well, that's okay. I'll underwrite it. And now we're at a point where the straits are opening, and there's provisions made so that ongoing, the risk factor associated with shipping oil in the Middle East is going to be greatly reduced, which means that the cost of oil is going to be reduced. So basically, it's been a little painful, but it's going to get better. And then what's going to happen is we're going to see to it that Iran is going to have no choice except to do a military stand down. And basically, when that happens, we're going to have peace within the Middle East and ostensibly around the world. But before we go on, do you have any questions or comments, Meri, or should we go on down to the next slide?
Well, in the people in Iran, there is a great awakening revival that's going on. I've interviewed one of my friends, Cameron Urari, and there's like hundreds of thousands of people that know Jesus, and there is a revival in Iran. So I believe the prayers and the people rising up is making a huge difference. So continue on.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So this takes me to my book, and God told me, I'm going to bring you out at the last second. I'm going to hold you in the cleft of the rock until the world is at a tipping point, the likes of which is never seen. That's right now. That's where we're at right this very minute. And basically, this book contains the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And the truth will set you free. And so right now, I want to make a special appeal to the younger people, because of all the people out there that I think are in distress and concerned, it's the young people. It's the Generation Zs, it's the millennials, because they can't see a future. They can't buy a house. They're trapped in school loans, and they find that the jobs aren't paying enough to even get by. So within this book, I tell you literally everything you need to know in order to understand how to chart your course in this rapidly changing environment. So if you want to buy this book, just click on that QR code. If you're not quite ready, click on it anyway, and I'll give you a chapter that you can read for free so you can understand what's in it. So let's get out of this and go on down and get back into the story here. So here we are. We're starting with the Bible, and God's not a man that he can lie. He knows the truth. He knows the end before the beginning, and he's telling us right here in the Bible in Jeremiah 49. He was talking about ancient times, and he was talking about Elam, and Elam would then become Persia and become today known as the modern country of Iran. And he's going on and saying what's going to happen to them, and he describes that their power militarily back in the day was from their archers. And so I pulled this up and I said, well, what does an archer do compared to other military forces? They strike from a distance. And so what did Iran hope to do? They thought that their ballistic missiles would be able to basically bring the world to their knee. It didn't work. So basically it's just an instant replay of what happened in the Bible. They're still striking from a distance, and you could say that their strength is their archers, but it's failed them. And now let's go on down and get another scripture, Ezekiel 38:4. And God said, he knew from the beginning before the end. He said, the time will come and I'll put a hook in this nation's mouth. He didn't tell us the name Iran, but he said that he described it. This nation is more powerful than you would think it would be given its size. And so if I extrapolate that and go forward, what is the power that Iran now brings and leverages the world? It's on the Strait of Hormuz, which is the lifeline for the blood, for the oil that is the blood of the world. And because of that, they've been able to hold the world hostage. And God says, nope, he's always said everything, all these wars we're ever going to have is always about oil. He's going to bring it to an end. He's going to put a hook in their mouth, and they're going to lose this war. Period. There it is, right out of the Bible. So let's go on down. Now, before I go, do you have any, I know this is an area of expertise for you. Do you have anything you want to add before we go on?
Well, I think the oil is also symbolic, Larry, of the Holy Spirit, that God is going to open the heavens and pour out oil. And we're going to see the oil of joy for mourning, a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair, that we're going to see when God flips this. Like the scripture that says, when the Lord brought the captives back to Zion, we were like those who dreamed. So it's always a Red Sea moment. For whatever reason, God many times will allow us to wait to the last minute, and then it turns around, it flips, the sea's open. Esther, Haman gets, hung. And, there's a time of rejoicing that we need to trust God right now and not look to our own understanding. So anyway, keep going.
Absolutely. Next slide. All right, this is going to give us some more history. We're going to go back to where all this hatred began, and then we're going to jump forward to 1953. So basically, this story begins way back in Genesis 21, 1 through 21. And what we find is that Abraham and Sarah are told they're going to have a child, but they say it's impossible. They're too old. And so after some time passes, Sarah says, go to my handmaiden Hagar and have a baby with her. And he does. And basically that is the birth of Ishmael. And then later they have their own baby, just like God promised. He's not a man that he can lie, and they have Isaac. And then Sarah says, you have to send Ishmael and his mother Hagar out. And so he sends them away. And that birthed what? That birthed the orphan spirit that has been behind all of the hatred that's plagued the world ever since. God said that these two boys would be the founders of great nations. And so if we look forward and we see what happened, we see that basically two nations did come out of their loins. And the first is with Isaac, and that is Judaism, which is tightly related to Christianity. And then the other one is Ishmael, and that was the Muslim community, and that was the Quran. And so those two forces have been at odds with each other for forever. And there was 1,400 years of perpetual war on the Crusades, and then finally, about 100 years ago, that was suspended. But we've been fighting over this supposed wrongdoing that was done to Ishmael, and the formation of a government that is just absolutely dedicated to ruling the world. I'm going to go forward in 1953, and we're going to see where the seed of hatred against particularly the United States came, and that is for the fact that that Iran and issued it's all about oil, right? An exclusive contract with the Three Sisters Oil Company for the rights to drill oil in Iran. And the Iranians came in and they elected a democratically elected leader. And the first thing he did is he says, "You're raping us, England." And they said, we're going to nationalize the oil fields. And they did. How did they do it? They came to the United States. They came to Eisenhower, who was then the president. And he said, "Yep, I'll help you." And he said, "We'll stick the CIA on them and we'll create a coup." And they did. And basically that created the seed where the Shah of Iran was put in place. And now they had no legitimate government. Their government was puppeted by the United States and by Europe and by England. And that caused tremendous angst. And that was all the way back 73 years ago. So now I'm going to come forward. That's going to be important. And we go forward. And then we go to the crisis moment where November 4th, 1979, and the Islamic Republic is founded. And basically that's their own coup. Now they're taking back their nation, but it's not the nation that you would think. Basically, it's a nation that's like no other. It's upside down. You've got the governmental body is secondary to the clerics, and so the clerics are the one that basically rule Iran. And so that was the birth of the Islamic Republic. And then we're going to go down to another critical moment, and that is when we were facing a hostage situation. I think it was 66 hostages that were kept for months, and Carter goes in and makes a failed rescue attempt. And so those are the seeds, both back in antiquity and today, that have created the situation that we see today. But as we go forward, we're going to see that things have changed and that whole new scenario is now possible. Comments before we go on, Meri?
No, but if you look back in history, when the Shah of Iran was in power, I mean, the nation was fairly free. Women didn't wear the burqas. They weren't, they were driving. It was pretty much more like an American society. And when that happened and the Ayatollahs and everything took control, it literally brought them into a place where women became dominated. It totally went backwards in time, all about control and manipulation. And so you can see the history. And I believe that now what we're seeing is we're going to see a freedom for the people again, in particular women.
Yes. And folks in the audience, keep that thought, because I'm going to punctuate it when we get to the appropriate slide. Meri's absolutely right in what she's saying. Let's go on down to the next slide. And here we're back. This is the last slide on the Bible, and God always knows the end before the beginning. And so basically Daniel is having a dream, and just like before, he's, we won't know what these mean until we get to the point in time. But he's telling Nebuchadnezzar, you're the great nation, you're Babylon, and you will be followed by other great nations. That'll be Persia, that'll be Greece, and then they'll come Rome. And Rome is described as being made of iron and absolutely invincible. But through history, something happened. They got overextended. They became adulterous, and debauchery came in. And basically, the nation was split into two halves. Rome was now in two parts. And what they needed to do, they needed to do something to obtain power. And so they basically ceded the power officially or unofficially from Caesar to the Pope. And now that birthed the Holy Roman Empire. For what we've seen then ever since that time is it's the Catholic Church that anoints kings and removes kings and tells the kings, this nation is my enemy, that nation is my enemy. It was the Catholic Church who sent Philip out to conquer England when their armada was sunk, because God intervened again in what was called the miracle of the calm sea, when they were about to obliterate England. And they had one advantage, that they were small ships. And the admiral says, let's take that advantage away from them, we'll cut your anchors and we'll lighten our load and we'll be able to take them out in no time. The minute that happened, God saw to it that a hurricane hit and the power of the world shifted from Spain and eventually went over to England, and because God had plans for England. So that's where we're at from a religious viewpoint. And now let's get into more current times. Let's go to the next slide. And I can't believe that this question is even being asked, but here it is. And lots of people are asking it. Is the world worse off now than under the nuclear agreement negotiated by Barack Hussein Obama? Of course, That is absurd. Let me tell you who Barack Hussein Obama is. First of all, as soon as he got out of college, he taught rules for radicals. And what was that all about? That was about a radical movement to bring the United States into some such debt that it would collapse under the weight of that debt. And I think he pretty much accomplished his goal, because he can boast that under his presidency, he drove the national debt up more than any other single president who preceded him. That's quite an accomplishment. Now, let me bring out some more facts about this man before we go on to another slide. Now, let me see. He was asked about his faith. He was professing to be a Christian, and he made a boo-boo. He said, "You mean my Muslim faith?" And then he was on stage and they were playing the national anthem, and he refused to put his hand over his heart. And then he said, "I will reduce the might of the military, of the U.S. military, to a level acceptable to my Muslim brothers." And then he said, "The call to prayer is the most beautiful sound I've ever heard. That means you're accepting Islam." And then he says, if situation ever turns bad to get between the United States and Islam, I will be with my Muslim brothers. So do you think the man who holds those ideologies is going to negotiate a nuclear agreement that is going to truly be in the best interest of the United States? Not a snowball's chance at blank, blank. I mean, come on, folks. So what was the weakness to it? The weakness was, hey, we're going to send some people over and we're going to check up on you and we're going to see if you're enriching and you're doing what you're supposed to do. But you know what? Take all the time you want. You can have a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Go hide everything wherever you want to hide it, and we'll come in and we'll just rubber stamp it. That was the weakness of that agreement. You don't notify, you just show up. So it had no hope of ever stopping them from eventually getting a nuclear weapon. And we're going to go on and we're going to find out they would use it. They are radicals and they want to control the world. Let's go down to the next slide. And here it is, out of their own mouths. These was a protest, and they say Islam will dominate the world. And they're in the Bible, and they're in the book of Revelation, and they are one of the beasts. They're the pale horse that basically carries a sword and whacks people's heads off. So they are absolutely committed, and they want to have jihad, which is war, and they want to bring in their 12th Amman, and the 12th Amman, they don't care if it causes nuclear war and obliterates the world as long as they come out victorious and are the dominant force in the world. That's the force we're up against right now, folks. It's an ideology of demonic power. Let's go on down to the next slide.
Well, and also, Larry, just to interject, because they've opened up the borders in England and many of these European nations with an infiltration of all these different Muslims coming in from other countries. There's many rapes that have been going on that the news media is not even really talking about. In England, I think the stat I heard was 250,000 girls were raped. I mean, you're not even hearing this on mainstream media. But I'm letting you know that there's a lot of nefarious things going on. We really need to pray, everybody, because it's an agenda. And we pray for the Muslim people. There's a lot of good Muslims, but we're talking about the jihadists, the radical ones now. So keep going, Larry.
All right, let's go to the next slide. Here's what we got. Just exactly what Meri was talking about, but it occurs in the United States of America and in Europe. So here's what the global financial elite who puppet every nation in the world have orchestrated. They have basically seen to it that in the Western Hemisphere, that the nations, we invoked Western hegemony on them and kept them in poverty. And it was the CIA that initially orchestrated all the drug cartels and put those nations in the situations that they're in. But Trump has said, no more hegemony, no more Western hegemony. We're going to treat all the world fairly and equitably. And so what happened in all that period is that angst that was created by our own government being coupled by the global financial elite sent millions of people here to the United States. And the plan that the global financial elite had is eventually, one way or the other, we've got to take America down, but they're too strong militarily to take them down from a straightforward attack. So if we can get enough radicals into the nation where we can attack them from within and from without, then we have a chance to bring America down. Now let's switch gears and go to Europe. And what happened is, all of our wars have been false flag events. So they created the Arab Spring, and they toppled the stability of the Middle East for various different reasons, part of which was because some of the nations over there had the audacity to want to get off of the fiat currency and go to a gold-backed currency. But what happened is that Syria got hit particularly hard, and 6 million Syrians migrated over to Europe, and now people are coming in from all over Africa. And what's happened is they're there, and they're an army of what's the word I want? Accursion, just like here in the United States. And now they have a secret weapon that people know. It's not just kinetic. They basically, here in this country, we have one wife, one husband, one child, a two child, and our birth rate is 1.3 children per family, which is not even a replacement. But they can have up to 4 wives, and each wife can have 2, 3, or 4 kids. And so in just the short period of time that they've been going to Europe in mass, they are now in some countries becoming the majority population, and they're coming out in the streets and blocking the streets, and they're demanding Sharia law. And in Scotland, they just killed a guy just recently. And so finally, what we see, I think it may be too late for Europe, but Europe is finally saying, we're going to take a stand. We are going to get these people out of here. In America, we still have hope that we can do this. Well, let's go down to the next slide, and we'll see what's going on further with this. So I need to ask you guys a question. Just use your common sense. Whether it's the United States or whether it's Europe, if you come in as a refugee, you have the shirt on your back, and that's about it. So ask yourself this: how in the world is it that throughout all of America, throughout all of Europe, you see these multi-million-dollar mosques popping up everywhere? Because it's a shadow incursion into both America and Europe. Turkey and Saudi Arabia and other Muslim nations are funding these mosques. They're funding it because they're using it to radicalize people. So from the pulpit, they teach radicalization. From the schools that reside within the mosque, they teach radicalization. And what else did they say? Relating back to that other slide, we'll marry your wives and we'll take over your nation through population. So basically, we need to take a stand, and Europe is finally taking a stand, and they're saying we're going to audit every single solitary dollar that comes in for one of these mosques. And if we find any money laundering of any kind, your mosque will be shut down completely. There's legislation being done in America where we're basically making proposals to say we will have no Sharia law in any state in the United States of America. And there's something that's trying to get birthed, and that is that if you have dual citizenship, you can't hold political office. So, and then this is a plea to the people out there. You need to understand this is an enemy who's willing to do anything to take the United States down. So please, folks, stop fighting ICE. We need to get these radicals out of here. They are a military invasion that represents a real threat to the United States of America. Before we go on, Meri, let's give you a chance to comment.
Well, about ICE, it was interesting. I heard on a report that President Trump wants to change the name of ICE to NICE, like national. and so that, and so every time a reporter or somebody on mainstream media has to talk about ICE, they'll say, and nice. I thought that was kind of funny. And so just in the verbiage, whenever they'd have to talk about ICE, they'd have to call him nice. So anyway, keep going.
Let's go. All right. So here's what just happened just a few days ago in Europe. The parliament overwhelmingly voted to do what? They are going to expedite the extradition of illegal immigrants, particularly focusing on what? On the incursion of millions of Muslims who have come in, who are now overreaching and demanding that they want to be in control of the governments of Europe, period. That can't be tolerated. So there's hope. There's hope. Is it too little, too late? Time will tell. Let's go on down, and we'll get into another segment of what this is all about. So here we go. And you were basically alluding to this a little earlier with something you said, Meri. So we go back to 53, and we have that coup, and we bring in the Shah of Iran. And yes, there was a whole lot more freedom there, but it was a coup, and people hated this because we pulled a coup. But here's what I need to say. If we look at it today and we ask the question that's up on that yellow banner, who do the Iranian people see as their primary enemy? Is it Israel? Is it the United States? Or is it possibly the IRGC? Here's the answer. That was 73 years ago. Almost everybody in that country, except a few old stodgers that are still in power in the RCG, they're gone. They're dead. They don't remember those days. They don't have that hatred. So who do they look at and say, who is our real enemy? they look at the IRGC and say they're our enemy. So in 26, the majority of the population see the IRCG as the oppressors. Every time they have a protest, they basically shut them down, and afterwards they take the ringleaders and they arrest them and they hang them in the public square. And if that isn't called oppression, I don't know what is. And so that's the enemy. The people overwhelmingly want the IRGC to be toppled. They're begging for it. They are calling for the return of, listen to this, none other than the son of the Shah of Iran. If that doesn't drive home the fact of who is the real enemy here, it's not the United States and it's not the Shah. It is the IRGC who kills their own people. Let's go on down to the next slide. Chime in anytime you want, Meri.
Well, I was just at the 107, had an event at the Ahern, hotel in Vegas where I did my event on May 8th and 9th. And Eduardo Bolsonaro was there. And of course, there's a new movie called Dark Horse that was released. And the same thing, the son Eduardo has not been able to come back to Brazil. They've incarcerated Bolsonaro, but now I think he might be out under house arrest. But he basically contested the election. And in that country, you can't do that. You get thrown in prison. So these are shadow governments that are trying to control, as you know, these different nations. 73 nations elections, according to some of the stats I've heard, have been stolen. So right now we're seeing God is exposing this stuff. And I believe we're going to see, as you're talking about now, a great shift in what we're seeing. And we're going to be the head, not the tail.
Absolutely. This one slide up at the top of the print's a little small, but basically what it's saying is we want to have freedom. We want to get out from under our enemy, the IRGC. And so here's what the people are looking at. They've had economic hardship inflicted on them because of the conduct of the IRGC, which caused massive sanctions to be brought against Iran. And so the people have protested multiple times. 2017, that was over rising food prices. 2019, that was over fuel prices. 2012, that was over a water crisis, which I'll come back to. That is really important. And then 2022, over women's rights. As you know, under Sharia law, women have no rights whatsoever. A woman came out in public without a burqa, and basically she was killed, and there were massive protests every time the IRGC comes out. It's usually in the capital city, and they quell it, and then they hang a few people. But basically in 2026, something happened. They're now a situation that's changed where the people are in such economic despair. The inflation is rampant. People are losing their jobs. The subsidies that they had for food subsidy has been taken away because they're in such financial difficulty, and there's no water. And so now, faced with starvation, which is the outcome that you always have when you have a siege, which is what this has become. It's gone from a kinetic war into a siege. Either you starve to death or you capitulate. That's it. And so the people went out, and one night, this happened twice, and they protested in every single city in Iran. And whoa, what happened? Did the RGC come in and pull all those protests? Nope. They realized something. They realized that they're having desertions from the military. They realized that the people in the military don't want to kill their own family members and own friends. And they realize that they don't have anywhere near the military capacity to stand against the entire population when they stand up in unity, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That's what the people are standing for. And what you alluded to earlier is happening, Meri. There's more people converting to Christianity in Iran than in any other nation in the world. And it's because of the oppression that they are under. So let's go on down, and the path forward is what? The regime change it's inevitable. The military stand down of the IRGC told us something that's absolutely crucial. They've lost. They just haven't owned up to it yet. And the IRGC, this is the only hope they have of obtaining any power whatsoever. Militarily, I don't care what anybody says, they're going to lose their nuclear enrichment program. And something that just happened is the biggest kind of play card they had was they were in a 20-year agreement with Russia, an alliance, where they gave them cover at the UN, where they were providing them with parts for their missiles, where they were going to give them modern airplanes. And in a 24-hour period, they got this curt little telegram: we're pulling out. Russia as decided, as is China. That regime is pretty shaky, and we don't want to be siding with somebody who's going to go down. So they're hedging their bets, and they're pulling the support out of Iran, leaving them with no support. The whole world. Finally, Trump has to push it until we got to the point that people could see we were winning, and now 31 nations have joined an alliance. And just like they can't stand against the people revolting internally, they're not going to stand against 31 nations around the world that say, we want peace, and you're the thorn in our side that's keeping us from getting it. So the IRCG is going to collapse. The only hope they have is that most people don't realize they're not just a military organization. They control, depending on who you talk to, 25 to 40% of the economy of Iran. And so with that, what's happened? This is something that you're repeating. World War I, World War II, what happened? The United States rebuilt Europe, right? So not America. Don't blame this on America. The Iranian nation, the Islamic nations in the Middle East, the oil-rich nations have said, if you'll cooperate, if you'll stand down your nuclear program, if you'll stand down your ballistic missile program, if you'll join the Abraham Accords, we'll give you $132 billion. And Trump said, we'll remove the sanctions. And so then what's going to happen? The money is going to flow, and it's not going to flow to military, because guess what? They're completely out of water, but their neighbors in the Middle East aren't, because they have invested billions in these salination plants. So a lot of that money is going to have to go to critical infrastructure, a large part of which is to give water to the people. And then everything that has to be rebuilt, guess where that money is going to flow if the IRGC cooperates? To the construction industry controlled by the IRGC. That's their only hope to retain any power of any sort. Comments before we go on, Meri?
Well, also, as a lot of people know, this AI that is sucking a lot of water up in a lot of places too, where they're building these, I don't know what they call them, but that helps generate all the AI technology. So it looks like, excuse me?
Data centers.
Yes, data centers. Anyway, so it looks like the war, some of it's going to be over water. But anyway, we're going to see a great shifting and turnaround. So keep going.
All right, let's go to the next slide and look what we've got. We've got a slide on water. So what you're talking about, here's maybe something I need to say. The global elite puppet masters tell us that we got to go to the Green New Deal. And it's all about carbon emissions, but Trump is calling them out. And now Europe is actually standing up, because they've been forced into a severe economic crisis, because, listen to this, the non-elected bureaucratic government in Brussels controls all of the elected governments in Europe. And they forced on them all these millions of immigrants, and they forced them onto the Green New Deal with their solar panels. And they're finding out that now Europe has a critically huge energy crisis on their hands. But now let's focus back on Iran in particular. So what they have done is they said, like Europe said after World War II, we have to consolidate power, because if we don't bring all these nations together, we'll never be a global superpower again. Well, in a similar vein, Iran has said we have to have more population. Population comes power. And so from 1953 to now, they've over doubled their population. It's 92 million people. And all the while, in the background, they knew something, and they allowed it to happen. They knew they were in a desert. They knew their neighbors were developing desalination plants so that the people would have water, and they sucked the water out of those aquifers unrelentingly until now they're dry. I don't mean low, I mean dry. And their dams, their reservoirs are 3 to 4% capacity. And in the capital city, Tehran, they're actually saying we may have to move the capital because there's no water coming out of the pipes. People are having to go out into the streets and get containers filled from tankers. That's how critical that water shortage is. So if you don't have water and you don't have food, who are you going to fear more? Are you going to fear starvation, or are you going to fear the IRGC who are you going to stand up against? You can't stand up against water, but you can stand up against the IRGC. So they're facing a critical problem that they just can't, they can't possibly overcome. So what made those people come out into every single solitary city was they came out and said, because of our financial difficulties, we're going to have to cut back on the food supplements that we're giving you. No bread, no water. That's a crisis. That's starvation. And so the people, look at those pictures over there, they're coming out in masses. And there's many, many, many of them, and too few IRGC. They're going to fall. That's it. That's the bottom line.
Well,
and God's hand.
Larry, you don't really hear about this on mainstream media.
No,
you don't hear about this at all. Even though I don't watch mainstream media, but you don't really hear about this. So it's good that you're addressing it, in particular with the starvation and the food. Anyway,
that's the hook. That's the hook that God talked about when we opened this presentation up. So we go on down. All right, here's something else that many people don't know about. This takes us all the way back. These things are planned out years in advance. So we had Gaza, and it was flattened, right? And Trump came in and said, I'll rebuild it. The builder, the master builder, he says, I'll rebuild it. I'll put hotels in there, gleaming hotels. I'll put golf courses, and we'll make it the Riviera of the Middle East. Well, he did. He got permission to do something called the Board of Peace, and that was to rebuild. Money would be coming from all kinds of different nations, mostly nations in the Middle East, and they would rebuild Gaza, and they're going to. But something more significant came out of it, and that is that all the nations in the Middle East said, we are no longer going to tolerate having the Strait of Hormuz used to control the world's supply of oil. And so they've been quietly building pipelines all over so that when this is all done, Iran's never going to have that leverage again. Instead of controlling 20% of the world's oil, they might control 5%. I don't know. But here's something that's coming through the Board of Peace that's really critical. This was an initiative that was the brainchild of Modi in India. And he said, you know what we need to do? We need to give the world an alternative to China's Belt and Road Initiative. And we need to get basically out from under the control of the Strait of Hormuz. So I propose that we have a water logistics channel from India to Saudi Arabia through all the Arab oil producing nations, terminating in Haifa, in Israel, and then going by water again all the way to Europe. And I want to show you the teeth that's in this. Basically, this thing is going to change the world. It's going to bring peace. It's going to bring the Abraham Accords to the table in a way that's significant. So this corridor is called IMAC, and it stands for the India Middle East European Corridor. And it is the most sophisticated logistics network that's ever been seen. So I want to read you the particulars of it. IMAC integrates rail and shipping routes from India through Saudi Arabia to Haifa and on through Israel to Europe. And then it incorporates, this is important, a digital payment system. So the principal nations that are involved in this are India, the oil-rich nations of the Middle East. Europe is really just a beneficiary primarily. So basically, whose money do you think this payment system is going to be denominated in? I think a large part of it is going to be United States currency. And then let's go on down. So it incorporates a digital payment system and a custom systems. And that's technology that Elon Musk has given us. So now those ships pull into their harbor in Saudi Arabia, and a whole fleet of drones drop down. They read those tags, and instantaneously that is expedited to move those containers from the ships to the rail. It goes up to Haifa, and then that's drones come down again, and it's expedited and put on ships to go make its journey over to Europe. And what's the outcome of that? There's more to this. There's an undersea, this is really important, fiber optics cable. And then this is the most important part. There's a high voltage cable for electricity to Europe. So we're going to basically step in, and we're going to bring Brussels to its knees, because we're going to have a solution for their energy crisis. Something else just happened recently. God's hand is in this. And Iraq just used their drones to take out the principal pipeline, the principal oil pipeline that was supplying oil from Russia to Europe. Do you think that was by accident? No, it's because all this time, just like the Middle East is making additional transit routes for their oil, Europe's been doing the same thing, making agreements. And so finally, I don't think Iraq could have done this unless they had the blessing from Europe, because remember, Europe has been funding this war to a significant degree. So they didn't just go in and bomb a pipe. No, they went in and bombed the pumping stations. That means that oil artery is cut, is severed. And so now we see that happening. And then we see this Board of Peace building this sophisticated pipeline. And then we see that China is having economic problems, and that the Belt and Road Initiative is basically crumbling. And so we look at this and say, the fate of the world is changing. Control of oil is changing. And then we go to Gaza. And what is this really going to mean? So basically, this is a highly sophisticated technological logistic chain. And where do you think they're going to put the logistics center? I got a hint. It's a place in Israel. It's a city. It's going to be what did Trump call it? The Riviera of the Middle East. It's Gaza. So that's the logistic heart of all of this. Everything is coming together. And then what is Trump going to do? Now we need to go back and we need to understand why oil is always so expensive, and how it's so expensive that it basically affects the ability of people to buy the necessities of life: food, water, housing, shelter, clothes, everything. If you don't have the money, it's there, but you can't afford it. So what's going on? Basically, Trump says the cost of oil is significantly related to the risk. So if we get out from under the Strait of Hormuz, and some of these ships that have gone through recently have had to pay a toll of $1 million to $2 million. So with this new logistics change, what Trump is saying, under the Board of Peace, we're going to have a 20,000 man private security force. And that's going to reduce the risk, and that's going to reduce the price. And when this is over, instead of oil prices going up, they're dramatically going to go down because of all the things that are happening. The world is waking up, and they're taking control away from Iran. And then basically the operational cost. Oh my goodness. If you want to belong to the Board of Peace, 26 nations have already signed up. You got to pay $1 billion ante, and then you got to pay a usage fee. You can call it a toll, you can call it a tariff, you can call it whatever you want, but it's a business venture, and it's going to raise billions of dollars. And so where is the money going to come from to pay for that 20 million man army? Not from the coffers of the United States citizens, but from the people who join that logistics program, who are part of the Board of Peace. They're going to pay for it. It's self-funding. And what's it going to give them? It's going to give a 40% faster transit route and a 30% cheaper cost. The world is changing. The leverage of Iran is gone, never, ever to be restored. Let's go on down to the next slide, unless you got comments.
Well, and Larry, a lot of the people, my viewers know I was in Israel when on Purim, when we started bombing Israel. And then, of course, then Lebanon, Hezbollah started bombing too. So I was in bomb shelters. I was there and saw what was happening. Israel didn't start that war. And of course, a lot of times Israel's being attacked. Mainstream media, you hear Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, a number of these people. I've talked to IDF people. In fact, Chaim Mailspin, who is one of my friends over there, has been in the Gaza blowing up tunnels of Hezbollah. And, there's a wrong narrative that is coming out from some of these big podcasters. And something doesn't smell right. So just, it doesn't pass the smell test to me, what some of these ones are saying. So that's all I'm going to say on that front. So keep going.
All right. So what's happening is, before this war ever started, many chess moves were made. Basically, it starts, I think, with what we did in Venezuela. Venezuela is going to out the election theft, but what it really did is it made a way for Trump to have this war without all the nations of the world coming at him. So after he invaded Venezuela and got their oil and then opened up our oil production, he was able to say to the world, it's okay, we can do this. He said, America now produces more oil than Saudi Arabia and Russia combined, and we'll make that oil available to you so that we can get through this war without causing a crisis that causes a complete global meltdown. And so that was always planned. And then here, something that you kind of brought up. Here's something else that was happening behind the backgrounds that nobody really truly understood. It was, in addition to all these logistics networks, what was happening was the groundwork was being laid for peace. So we knew that when this happened, that Israel was going to be attacked and they were going to send missiles over. But a lot of people didn't realize that Iran was going to attack their own Muslim nations, then hit their oil reserves because they wanted to bring pressure on the world to say, you've got to stop this war. So what did we do? We have given the Iron Dome to Israel, right? Well, we effectively gave their version of the Iron Dome to all the Middle East nations. And there was a requirement. Join what? The Board of Peace. Join the Abraham Accords. Bring peace to the Middle East. Put pressure on Iran. Give them an olive branch where they can come in and they can see a pathway to civility in the Middle East. And so Trump is pushing for peace. And he has really laid the foundation so that the entire Middle East is going to calm down and stop burning. And I don't care what anybody says. We won before we began. It was all in the Bible. Let's go on down to the next slide. So here's the reality.
When you talked about that, I had friends as I went out through Jordan. I was kind of stuck in Israel for 22 days. We finally got out through Jordan, but I had friends that flew out of Jordan and they went into Dubai and they were stuck there because they got attacked. They got attacked and they were stuck, in Dubai, being attacked, like you said, right in the Middle East. These other countries were being attacked. So I know people firsthand that were there when the strikes were happening. So, you're right. Exactly right, Larry. So keep going.
Yeah. All right. So here's the military might of Iran. It's already crushed. They're not going to get parts from Russia. They're not going to get new airplanes. They're not going to be able to have the money to rebuild their military or their navy or the ships. They're going to have to spend money on survival, on infrastructure, on water, and on food and so forth. A nation that doesn't have food security, it literally has no nation to be sovereign over, and the people will revolt and will take them down because they have no other choice, and no money to pay for military for the proxies, so they're going to be forced to stand down. And Russia withdrew from the agreement that they had, so they're not going to have any cover in the UN, and alternative transit routes are basically making the Strait of Hormuz a non-strategic issue, or at least greatly reducing it. And so basically the leverage of the Strait of Hormuz is gone, the leverage of Iran is gone, and peace and prosperity is going to be forced upon Iran, and the whole world is going to come out of this, and God is going to take us into exactly the place he said he would take us. He's coming back for a spotless church, and for that to happen, we have to have revival around the world, and this peace accord that is going to come out of this is going to basically open the door for that. So we going down to the next slide?
Yes. Yeah. We're going to wrap it up too.
This is kind of a summary. This is telling us what's happening over there in real terms. Iran is collapsing from within. Economic bleeding, $500 million a day, and that will continue until this agreement is officially signed and put into place. Food and gasoline shortages. It's ironic. The nation that produces all this oil can't produce their own gasoline, and a gasoline shortage. The currency is in rapidly collapsing. A catastrophic water crisis. That's probably the most important thing of all. Military defections are occurring. They're not paying the people, and the people don't want to kill their own people. And protests in 31 cities with no response from the IRGC. That's a tell. Focus. Shutdowns of the oil wells, if they persist, and if their storage capacity, if in fact occurs to be no more, then basically that's going to mean when they fire them back up again, they're going to have a permanent reduction in the amount of oil that they can produce. That's going to reduce the amount of money, and it's going to further make them dependent on aid from other nations. An attack on the oil-rich Muslim nations backfired. This is what we were talking about a second ago. Muslim nations signed Abraham Accord, Board of Peace. We just talked about it. India, U.S., Saudi Arabia, and Israel to build IMAC. That's the Board of Peace project that we were talking about. And coalition forces join. That's 31 nations to clear the straits of the mine so that the straits can be opened safely. And Russia and China pull technicians out, meaning that, hey, these places are now fair targets. If you need to come in, you can do it. And basically, that's it. All of that is against Iran. I don't care who you are. I don't care how ideologically driven you are. You can't stand against that alignment coming against you, period. So we're going down. We're almost done.
Keep going.
All right, so this is what's coming around the world. Does what is happening in Iran have anything to do with the currency reset? It absolutely does. So real quickly, America is entering into agreements with all of the Western Hemisphere and saying we're no longer going to inflict you with Western hegemony. But the really important thing I want you to see here is all that red. Those are what? Those are the transit portions, the transit. What's the word I want? Passages for the world, and we've got to have Greenland, we got to have Panama, we got it thanks to Trump. But now you look over in the Middle East, and you got the Strait of Gibraltar, you got the Suez Canal, you got the Strait of Hormuz, you got the Strait of Malacca. The whole of Europe, Africa, and Asia are all bottled up with strategic traps. They have to have peace, because if something goes wrong, we can shut those arteries down and they'll suffer greatly. So the world is changing, and God had it all planned, because look what he did to the map of the world. We're 3,000 miles away with oceans on all sides, and they're all bottled up with all of these places that are very, very critical. Let's go on down to the next slide. All right, and here, this is something that's happening that people don't even recognize. Basically, the world is changing in ways you can't imagine. They're not announcing this, but if you've got your eyes open, you can see what I'm going to talk about. We had, back following World War II, we had the Bretton Woods Accords, where we were granted the privilege of being the world's reserve currency, provided we made our currency able to be turned in exchange for gold. But then in 1985, things got a little dicey. What happened is our currency became the strongest in the world by far, and it put us in a situation where, yes, we had a good, strong domestic market, but we couldn't compete internationally because it made our prices too high. So they called another accord. It was called, after the place it was held, the Plaza Accords, and they called in. The United States called it, and they brought in Japan, they brought in England, they brought in France, and they brought in West Germany. And so you guys got to help us. We got a problem. Our currency is too valuable. You've got to help suppress the value of our currency so that we can have access to the international marketplace. And by the way, you might want to think about the fact that we're the military police force of the world. So please help us out. The main target there was Japan, because of the strength they had. So we made a little deal with them. We said, you help us out, and you make our currencies look more valuable, and you can have access to the United States and bring your factories here. And look what happened. They did, and look at the auto industry. So now here's what's happening. This is my opinion now. So basically, she reached out, and he reached out to Bessett, and he says, hey, I want you to come to China, and I want you to bring 18 of the biggest CEOs in the world, and let's have a little powwow. You know what that is? That's the Plaza Accords too. That's them saying, hey, America, we recalculated, and maybe we're not so sure we could beat you in a war. We don't want to do that. We want to have a place at the table for the financial reset. So let's sit down and let's see what we can do. Maybe we can have some sanctions reliefs. Maybe you can let us come into the United States and build factories and build certain things and not have tariffs placed on them. And so I don't care what anybody says. That's why those 18 CEOs went there, and we're in the midst of negotiating a financial settlement instead of a war, so that the world can go in the direction into peace and not into a Holocaust that would literally destroy the entire planet. Let's go on down. I think there's only 1 or 2 slides left. So this is what's coming. This is the reset. And this is what you have to have. Basically, the first ones to go are to be the dinar and the dong. And I'm going to let you guys read that. The bottom line is both of those nations have rebuilt their infrastructure. They both have viable economies. And the only thing they're waiting for is for the political calculus to change. And it has changed, and it is changing. So with this war, things were set up. And what happened is Iraq just elected their own government. They now have a parliament. And now, for the first time in history, they have the power to reset the currency. So the political equation is gone. The only thing that remains in terms of Iraq revaluing their currency is the proxies have to stand down, and that's in the process of happening. So with that, the military foot is off, the economic foot is off. They're a sovereign nation, and they can reset. And then over in China with Taiwan, I think Xi has decided that it may be a little too risky to attack Taiwan, so he's trying to negotiate whatever it is he needs. We'll ask for things, they'll ask for things. I don't know what it's going to come out of it, but basically they want peace. They don't want to come into a war with the United States. So the reset is finally, since the 1960s, at a point where it's feasible that it could happen. Let's go on down. Hey, we're back to where we began. The hook is in the mouth, and the war is going to be ended, and it's going to bring peace and prosperity to the world. Let's go to the very last slide, and then we can say adieu. So please, if you like this information, share it with everybody far and wide. Share Meri's channel, share my channel. You can find me on Liberty Crusade Official. My website is libertycrusade.com. That QR code will take you to my website where you can buy a book. And if you're not ready to buy a book, you can get a free chapter. So please support Meri, please support me, please support the cause. And I hope sincerely that this has made the people who've heard this feel more comfortable, have less fear, have less anxiety, understand that God's got it under control, and so does Trump. So let's stop lambasting our president and recognizing him for what may be the greatest political leader in modern history. So with that, Meri, I'll turn it back to you to close.
Yes. Wow. What a presentation, Larry. Yeah, put us full screen. Yeah, so what a presentation. As we close out today, God has not given us a spirit of fear, but a power, a love, and of a sound mind. And we have to understand that sometimes what we see, we're watching a 5D chess moves. And we need to pray for President Trump. We need to pray for our country, because it does say in 2 Chronicles 7:14, if my people called by my name, what does it say? If we humble ourselves, pray, seek his face, and lastly, turn from our wicked ways. It's really the people of God that have to do this. And then the promise is, and it says, and afterward, it says, if we turn from our wicked ways, then he said, then I will hear from heaven and heal your land. And so really, that's why the rededication of America that I went to in May, I was there for 12 days in the nation's capital and actually flew into Philadelphia. So we are seeing some massive things happening. I'm getting ready to go back to DC for 4th of July. So please, if you want to go and help contribute to that trip, you can go to MeriCrouley.com, put it on the screen, and / donate. Some people have donated to that trip, $250 for the trip to DC to have the 250 years celebration of being there. And what we're doing there is we're praying. I have a whole team of people that are boots on the ground, that literally we are making a difference and seeing things change where the heavens are open with the prayers that we pray. And also pray about Branson coming up. Put it on your calendar, October 2nd, Friday evening, and we'll start. And all day Saturday, October 3rd, from 9 a.m. till 10 at night. We're going to have worship. We're going to have some incredible speakers, including Larry, including one, I haven't asked one yet, but we've got Kathy O'Brien's confirmed. So is Troy Brewer. We're inviting a number of prophetic voices as well. And so I believe it's going to be very significant. And if those of you are interested in being a sponsor, please email me at MeriCrouley@yahoo.com, and we'll send you out a sponsor package, and you can be part of this great event. The 9th one, something is getting ready to be birthed in the heartland of America. So thank you, Larry, for coming on. Thank you for watching. Now is the time. Please share this far and wide. Please follow or subscribe. And if you make comments, and it really does change your algorithms. I know in the past I've been shadow banned. When you talk about child slavery, they will shadow ban you even on Rumble. I'm telling you, it doesn't matter. We just stay the course. We're not in this for the views or how many people sit in the pews. As long as we don't stop, we can't lose. Amen, Larry? So
Amen.
God bless you all. Thank you, Larry, for coming on. Thank you for watching. I believe the greatest show on earth is really at the door. Our ceiling will now become our floor, and the Lion of the tribe of Judah will now roar. And it's time to score. Just like we're seeing in these soccer playoffs, it's time to score. And God is going to open a door. He says, behold, I set before you an open door which no man can shut. It's not if, it's what. We're going to say, did you see what God did? And you're going to say, yes, he flipped the grid. He like flipped the lid. And we're going to go like, wow, this is going to be the most amazing time to be alive. You're not just going to survive, but you're going to thrive, because you're going to realize that we're going to see, and what God has put on the scene, that he is going to give the people back their dream. And so, Larry, he did that one for you because he knows you like it when the Lord rhymes. I haven't done that in a while. He rhymed. God's sign, the rhyme, and it's divine. And so God bless you guys. And thank you, Larry. You're awesome. You're amazing. And
Thank you.
the best is yet to come. We'll see you soon. Thanks for watching.
Bye-bye, everybody.